In this chapter, we're going to look at your relationship with learning. It's important to note that everyone has their own unique relationship with learning. Some people associate learning with schooling and feel quite negative about it, while for others, learning is an extremely positive thing. The goal of this chapter is to make sure that you've at least made your peace with learning. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to develop a passion for it. To help us, let's look at a model that's been developed by Carol Dweck, Professor of Psychology at Stanford University. Her model distinguishes between two kinds of mindset, what she calls a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. A fixed mindset is characterized by a person who thinks that their ability to grow and develop is predetermined and limited. If you have a fixed mindset, you have a very static view of what you're capable of doing. I'm sure you know people who sometimes demonstrate this sort of mindset. You've probably heard people say, "I just wasn't made for maths," or "languages aren't really for me," for example. It's this sort of fixed mindset that convinces people to avoid the challenges that are so common and so important for learning. Learning can be difficult, and sometimes the greatest learnings come directly from the greatest difficulties. But when confronted with an obstacle, people with a fixed mindset are often quick to give up. For them, the relationship between effort and reward isn't clear. They respond poorly to criticism and have a tendency to ignore negative feedback. A fixed mindset is characterized by psychological constraints, often called limiting beliefs. But why and how do people find themselves with a fixed mindset? How do people develop or learn a fixed mindset? Learning is, after all, a completely natural part of life. Think about how babies and children are so eager to learn, to walk and talk and understand the world. Well, a fixed mindset is the product of different forms of psychological conditioning. Let's look at a few of them. The first is called learned helplessness. This results from negative experiences such as being punished or humiliated at school or by getting poor marks. This kind of negative experience can create a very pessimistic view of your ability to learn. Another type of conditioning is modeling. By surrounding yourself with people who share and express a fixed mindset, you typically begin to imitate the same behaviors and beliefs. In other words, a fixed mindset is contagious. However we explain these psychological conditionings, the result is the same: the development of an unhealthy relationship with learning, and in particular, an unhealthy relationship with failure and criticism. Rather than seeing failure and criticism as an opportunity to learn, people with a fixed mindset usually see failure and criticism as a disincentive to learn more. But failure is only failure if we don't learn from it. In fact, failure is a crucial part of everyone's learning process. I particularly like the concept of excellent mistakes, those that happen when you're making your best efforts. These are often the very best opportunities for learning since they're unrelated to your effort. They're only related to your knowledge and ability, which can always be improved by learning. A fixed mindset is also nurtured by the idea that we're born with a certain amount of intelligence that remains unchanged throughout our life. This was the original idea behind IQ, the measurement of your fixed intelligence quotient. Thankfully, we now know that this idea does not correspond at all with our biological reality. That's what we've learned from the field of neuroscience, the science of the brain. The evidence is clear. Your brain is highly plastic and continuously changing. In fact, your brain creates new connections from moment to moment throughout your entire life. As a human being, you learn all the time. But the ease, efficiency, and joy with which you learn will depend on how you develop your capacity to learn. The opposite of a fixed mindset is a growth mindset. A growth mindset is characterized by the view that intelligence and abilities are not predetermined or limited, but rather that they develop and evolve. People with a growth mindset exhibit more resilience and perseverance when they encounter obstacles. They understand that they can't master something without effort and difficulty, and this pushes them to actively look for feedback and criticism. A growth mindset is one of optimism, determination, and humility. What kind of phrases do you think you might hear from a person with a growth mindset? Perhaps they'd say something like, "I don't know how to do that yet," or "I still have a lot of work to do to get better at something." You've reached the end of this chapter, so once you've stopped the video, write down as many phrases as you can think of that demonstrate a growth mindset. Then reflect on your own mindset and ask yourself, what's my relationship with learning? Then capture your reflections in your journal.